Today, Bitcoin crosses the $49,000 level for the first time since spot Bitcoin ETFs got the green light. Two executives leave Ripple's custody business Medico. And Hiro CEO Alex Miller weighs in on what's behind Bitcoin's move higher. Welcome to CNBC's Crypto World. I'm Talia Kaplan. Bitcoin kicking off the week by jumping to nearly $50,000 as spot ETF inflows accelerate. As of noon Eastern, the flagship cryptocurrency traded around $49,600. Ether climbed nearly 2% to more than $2,500, and Solana traded close to $109. Now, Bitcoin is coming off its best week since the beginning of December, ending up nearly 11% as of Friday. Positive sentiment has returned to crypto after big outflows from the Grayscale Bitcoin ETF suppressed sentiment over the past month. On top of that, Bitcoin is catching a bid from the stock market, with the S&P trading above 5,000. Now, the climb is also pulling crypto stocks higher, with MicroStrategy soaring 10% in the past 24 hours, and miners Marathon and CleanSpark jumping around 12% as of around noon Eastern. Okay, let's talk about the top stories. Anthony Pompliano thinks Bitcoin has become Wall Street's favorite asset. The Pomp Investments founder told CNBC Squawk Box this morning that the flows into Bitcoin ETFs prove the digital currency is well-liked among institutional investors.
I mean, look, the verdict's in, right? Wall Street doesn't just like Bitcoin, they love Bitcoin. If you think of these assets, there's been over 5,500 ETF launches in history. Never have we had a fund get to $3 billion in AUM in the first 30 days. BlackRock and Fidelity both just did it. So two for the first time in history. And then if you look at Bitwise and 21 Shares, ARK, they're both going to hit $1 billion this year, or this week. And so now you have four funds that are going to hit $1 billion of inflows. But the most interesting part of this is the inflows. These funds are doing $500 million a day of net inflows. But there's only 900 Bitcoin that is actually coming into the daily incoming supply. And so when you look at that, that's like $40 to $45 million. There's 12.5x more demand for Bitcoin than what's being produced on a daily basis.
Now, Pompliano was also asked what he's concerned about as a crypto bull, and he said that he expects Bitcoin's returns to dampen over time as the cryptocurrency becomes more popular and as the type of investor holding it changes. Next, Digital Currency Group saw a 59% rise in revenues last quarter. According to the company's shareholder letter, it brought in $210 million in Q4 of last year, compared to $132 million a year earlier. For the full year, DCG brought in $749 million, which is slightly down from $813 million in 2022. Now, notably, those numbers exclude the performance of Genesis, which filed for bankruptcy at the start of last year. On top of that, the company is facing an expanding lawsuit from the New York Attorney General, who now alleges $3 billion in fraud from DCG, Genesis, and Gemini. Last, Ripple's custody business Medico just saw two major departures. The company's CEO, Adrian Treccani, and Chief Product Officer, Peter DeMeo, are both leaving the firm, which provides institutions with custody services. Customers include Citi and HSBC. Now, we reached out to Ripple, and a spokesperson told us, quote, "We appreciate the strong and industry-leading custody business that Adrian and his team built, as well as his leadership in integrating the custody team and solution with Ripple following the acquisition last year." The statement went on to say that custody remains integral to Ripple's growing business. Now, Ripple acquired Medico back in May of 2023 for $250 million. All right, back to markets for our main story. I spoke with Alex Miller, CEO of Hiro, a company building development tools for Stacks, which is a layer that aims to bring Ethereum-like capabilities to Bitcoin. I got his insight on what's behind the recent crypto rally. He also explains how programmability is being brought to the Bitcoin ecosystem and the implications for adoption. Bitcoin broke through $49,000 this morning, and as of 11:30 was moving closer to $50,000. Now, the last time Bitcoin crossed the $49,000 level was on January 10th, when the SEC gave the green light for the first ever spot Bitcoin ETFs to trade in the US. So what do you think is driving prices right now? Do you think ETF inflows are playing into Bitcoin's moves higher?
Yeah, I think if we're talking literally today, I think if we've been tracking the BTC inflows over the last couple of weeks, we saw what kind of the typical thing was. There was a lot of pent up excitement about the ETF speculation that drove that initial spike. It drops off because people, see the actual news. But the reality of it is we're seeing $100 to $200 million a day in net new inflows into these ETFs, which is really good. And if you just calculate that out over a year, especially when you look at how little, probably only 10% of Bitcoin is even available on exchanges and liquid. The rest is all in cold storage and been locked up by folks. There's not a lot of available Bitcoin that's actually out there. And I think those really consistent ongoing flows are creating a lot of upward price pressure.
Do you expect the upward movement to continue in the months ahead? Do you think institutional demand driven by Bitcoin ETFs could bring new highs this year?
Absolutely. So I think there's multiple things that are putting upward price pressure on Bitcoin right now. Number one is like the actual ETF flows that we're seeing today. Number two is there's a lot of optimism and excitement just in the Bitcoin industry, right? You've got the Bitcoin halving coming up in April, where the block reward goes down, but has traditionally created some degree of upward price pressure. And then most importantly, there's a ton of technical innovation going on the Bitcoin chain, right? And so one thing you're seeing is that there's a lot of attention and a lot of development work that's being moved back from other chains like, say, Ethereum or Solana back into the original chain, into the Bitcoin chain. And so this isn't just like there's some excitement going on, and so like it's going to go up for a bit. There's really deep fundamental technical and core reasons that you're getting these price pressures and excitement for the chain from different places. And so, yeah, I think over the course of the entire year, if not longer, you're going to see this continued upward pressure and movement, I think.
So you mentioned the upcoming halving that's set to take place in April. Before the last halving in 2020, the price of Bitcoin increased by 19% from the same day a year earlier. So do you think 2024's events will have a similar impact on price? And what are the implications of the key technical events on the industry as a whole?
The important thing is that, again, if you go back and you look at it, there are multiple things that are creating these general upward price pressures. So, exactly where the price goes between now and April and in the month after April and when it goes up, when it goes down, I don't think anyone has any idea. But what I do think is that if you just look at everything that's going on, if you look at the larger macroeconomic situations that are happening right now, 2024, I think, is definitely going, compared to especially something like 2023 and the depths of the bear market that we saw there, 2024 is definitely a much more optimistic time for everyone involved here. And, I definitely obviously there's a not insubstantial portion of my personal portfolio that's allocated to Bitcoin. I'm pretty bullish about what we're going to see from it this year.
Now at Hiro, you work with the Bitcoin ecosystem, and I heard you say recently that you're excited about crypto because of the degree of innovation that's continuing to happen. What are some of the innovations that you're excited about?
Yeah, so at Hiro, we build Bitcoin developer tools. We've been saying for a number of years that the biggest contrarian bet in crypto is building on top of Bitcoin. And one of the things that's been great about the last year for us is that recognition has really started to spread to others, especially kind of driven by the launch of ordinals last year, which folks may have heard about. And so, as I mentioned, what you're seeing a lot of developers who maybe were out building in Ethereum land, coming back and building on Bitcoin. And the thing that's really happened is that people have unlocked new ways, right? The big difference, the whole reason Ethereum was launched in the first place was to add this compute, this programmability that didn't exist on Bitcoin. And thanks to Bitcoin layers like Stacks, where we do a lot of our building, or Lightning and BitVM and some of these other technologies, all of that programmability, the smart contracts and things that you're used to seeing in other crypto ecosystems, you can now come back and build all of those same types of applications and capabilities on top of Bitcoin, which I think, as we know, Bitcoin is the oldest, it's the most trusted, it's the largest asset value. The view that I really have here is like, if you're going to build something that you really want to be around for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, don't you want to do it on top of the thing that is really trusted? And, whether you love or hate Bitcoin or what your feelings on it are overall, I think it's really hard to argue that Bitcoin hasn't proven that it's established and going to be around for a very long time. And so watching people come back and build DeFi applications, identity applications, all of these things that kind of tear down a lot of the traditional international borders that were there and give equal access to some of these future legal and financial markets that exist across the world right now. The power and potential of that for Bitcoin and how it's going to provide economic access around the world is really powerful in my mind.
I also recently heard you say that the biggest promise of crypto is how it gives people around the world equal access to markets. Can you elaborate on that and explain how building out programmable use cases can accelerate adoption?
Absolutely. So, yeah, crypto has already shown its ability to do this. One of the biggest applications of crypto right now is stable coins, right? Because it gives you a single currency, usually the dollar here, that can be used regardless of who has access to what bank accounts, where, and how, right? Just almost instantaneous, very cheap global transfers. That's really, really powerful in a globalized world. And there's a lot of people in a lot of parts of the world that don't have access to the same markets right now. And for me personally, I'm a big fan of socioeconomic mobility. I think capitalism and things like that are the most powerful forces that we've had for eliminating and uplifting out of poverty in the last 100 years. And the ability to lower the barrier for participation for people even more is a huge part. And that's the promise of crypto. If you have a computer and an internet connection, it now doesn't matter where in the world you are. You can get access to these markets. And we've seen that from whether it's South America, Southeast Asia, Africa, even parts of Eastern Europe, or more rural parts of the US or Western Europe. It gives everyone the same ability to access and participate in these systems as everyone else. And that really just helps unlock a lot of potential for folks who maybe have not traditionally had the same access that, say you or I have.
Okay, that's all for Crypto World today, but we'll be back again tomorrow, and we'll see you then.